From Wakefield, it's the Nolan Car Night Show, starring Nolan. Why enjoy Nolan as guests with Paige Messier to the show. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's Nolan.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the show. And with me is a wonderful guest, a very successful person at what she does. She's on the rise with URI Athletics. You may see her on television, whether it's ESPN Plus or 3 or whatever the hell channel it is or program it is, but keep an eye out for her because she's going nowhere but up. And I am pleased and honored to have her. She's one like Paige Messier. Paige, how's it going today?
That was such a nice introduction. It's going good. I'm feeling good. And I'm so excited to be on.
Oh well, only the best. I've had Stone Freeman on, Will Pip twice, Zach Austin. I'm trying to think of I had Tyler Cruz, who would graduate a few years ago, so I told Zach I had to finish the Infinity Gauntlet and have that one missing piece to the URI puzzle. But I'm appreciative again, and you've been busy. A lot's gone on in the URI sports world the last 2 years, especially this year. You have firsthand experience more than myself with especially the women's program. But how's life been for you during the pandemic the last 2 years?
I'm with like how it is with every other student. It's been kind of crazy. My freshman year, it was kind of like a break, honestly, from high school. I wasn't like the school wasn't super hard. I wasn't really doing anything with sports. So my freshman year was just kind of smooth sailing. And then this year has been super busy. I'm just got like a little week off. But it's been good. I can't complain.
For you, you cover the sports as I mentioned now, and those who are the select few who decide to watch the program week to week know who you are. But how's it been this time around? Now being able to cover these sports teams where at first your freshman year necessarily people weren't allowed, and they're besides the players.
It's been awesome. My freshman year, I work with I think you had a neocon on, with the 5 cent cigars. So I did get to go to one game, but it was a women's game and there was no one allowed. So like it was a bland Ryan Center. It wasn't crazy. So being able to be in front of like all the fans and having that big atmosphere, it's been really cool, and it's an experience that not many people have.
Yeah.
So it's been awesome, especially covering the women since they've been so successful. I mean, they did just end their streak, but they had the longest streak of program history. They're so fun to cover. Like they have such good character. So it's been super fun to cover them. And then for the men's as well, I mean, they have a pretty decent audience that usually comes to the game. So that's the cool aspect of that side.
Not necessarily the success they've had so far this year, but we'll get into it in a little bit. Now, from my perspective, doing this is very limited. I'm not like yourself who's there covering these sports and talking to certain people. And I don't know what it's like. So explain to me, if you can, how much leniency have the coaches and personnel have had this season so far, now that it's sort of back to normal where you can sort of talk to them and interact?
Yeah, definitely. The only really interaction I've had with the coaches has been post game, like interview stuff like that, and full media is allowed. The rooms are usually always full. So it's been really cool to get that firsthand like communication with the coaches where I know it was through Zoom last year. So I mean, it's still technically face to face since it's through Zoom, but it's a whole different experience when they can interact with the different media members and you see their interaction together. So it's been cool to get like right away like contact with the coaches. I know you're allowed to go into practices. I haven't been able to get into one yet, but I know that is allowed. Stone Freeman, I think, goes to like a ton of them. I think Kyle Standing went to one. So it's been a lot more lenient because COVID is like, slowing down a little bit. So it's been really good.
You're one of Shane Donaldson's right-hand people. I don't know what else you got to do to get into that. You got to smooch up or whatever the saying is to get close into these games. I don't know what Stone's got that you don't. What I like to do with my guests is sort of start from the beginning after talk about the COVID malarkey, and don't want to go too far into COVID because that's a cause for debate that's more suited for the pundits on TV. But people, whether it's athletes or the coaches that I've had on or media personnel, if you're very successful at what you do, you know early on that that's what I want to do. That's only I want to do. A lot of them say in interviews, "Oh, I've known what I wanted to do since I was 6 years old." I had TJ Buchanan on a while ago, and he talked about how one must have been Christmas Eve where he was out shoveling his driveway with his cousin at his grandparents' house, and he was playing a pickup game, and that's sort of how he knew what he wanted to do. But what was your relationship like with sports, not just as a fan, but the perspective of covering it later on in life?
Yeah, so I was an athlete all through high school, all through my childhood. I played volleyball and softball. So like athletics have always been a part of my life. I didn't really know anything about sports media, as I think I might have said before, but um, I was just doing sports. I got recruited through high school for volleyball, like D2, D3 schools, but I really wanted to go to a big school. So with COVID and everything and just money, I was like, URI makes sense. So I tried to contact the coaches there, was unsuccessful. So then when I came in, I just was trying to just be a student without the athlete part, and it was just so hard, like with sports not being in my life anymore. So I was like, I don't know. And I was a communications major. I just didn't know where I wanted to go with it. So I did get in contact with Shane. I started getting involved with sports, and it's just been like crazy since then. It's like my new passion, because sports were my passion before,
Yeah.
like playing sports. But when you go into college, you need to like kind of re-identify yourself.
Yeah, sure.
Sports media became my new passion, so that's kind of where that sparked up, probably like midway through freshman year.
I know you. I know you might. I don't want to say I know. I don't want to seem like I'm a know-it-all, but you may have mentioned it when you were on Cam's Corner that you grew up in Rhode Island. You're from Rhode Island. What was your relationship like with the decision to go to URI? Because I know you also mentioned how you wanted to go to Penn State, but what was the viewpoint of URI going into it as a student? Was it something that was good, or was it something that you're like, it's a last resort type of thing?
It was a little bit of a last resort. I'm not gonna lie. I hadn't even like toured the school. I just applied because I was like,
Yeah.
it's URI. And my sister had gone there, so I went to go visit her a few times, but it was definitely towards the bottom of my list just because, Rhode Island's so small.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get out of Rhode Island. But then once I really started, like once I got here, I kind of fell in love with it. I don't want to transfer anymore. Like I did all through freshman year, I was like, this is a 1-year thing. I'm going to Penn State after this. Like I'm not. But now I'm like, you probably see me on Twitter. I'm the biggest Rhode Island like fan. I love this school so much. So at first it was definitely just because like it was the cheapest option for me.
Sure.
It was close to home and it was easy during COVID because everything was so uncertain. But now I'm literally the biggest Rhode Island fan like that there is.
Well, even from my perspective, I'm from South Kingston, which is a real large gap from Kingston campus to Wakefield, Rhode Island. I traveled really far. But even going to South Kingston High School, a lot of people and a lot of the upper echelon social people in school there. And it doesn't have to be just here. It could be where you're from or anywhere else where they're like, oh, I want to go down south. I want to go to this school and that school. It's big. It's nice. Where then you notice after the first year they come back and then they're all involved everything at school. And it's like, why complain? You're enjoying it this much for the social aspect. In sports, you see a lot of male personalities in the sports world that's dominate in that respect, but there are still some major female players in the sports media world. Doris Burke is one of them, and I'm sure you look up to her and looked up to her at the beginning, still to that day. What's it about her sort of gravitational pull for her career that you look up to and trying to want to emulate if you do?
Yeah, I mean Doris Burke is probably one of the biggest names, and she's from PC, which is literally like 10 minutes from my house, which is pretty cool. But I think how she kind of like embraces being a woman in sports, like she doesn't really, honestly, she doesn't talk much about being a woman, but she just like she knows its place, and she just kind of fits in like with everyone else. It's not like she sticks out in a certain way. Like she's just knowledgeable and she's passionate and she just does what she needs to do. I don't know. I just think her journey's really cool. Like she's good at what she does and she's just kind of a boss lady, like more than anything else. So I do love her. And then I mean, of course, Erin Andrews is a huge name too. And she has a podcast. It's like I don't know, I'm not sure what it's called. I should know that, but I reposted like her podcast, and then her account, like Erin Andrews, reposted my account. And I've been a fan of her ever since. I've been a fan ever since because she did me. But the boss ladies in sports, definitely look up to them.
Well, I think that brings up a good point. I'm sure it definitely plays a huge role, not just from a URI level in that realm it has, but with Doris, someone who is very knowledgeable, whether they have exact experience in that field, I'm sure definitely does her research, definitely, is for herself and a big player of herself and fighting for herself. And it's someone that you need to have, I think, a lot of confidence, because in your realm, definitely something that's cutthroat. And if you're not going to do the best you can, you're going to get stepped over, which I'm sure at URI, although there's a lot of sports that there's few opportunities in a small space to fail. At what point was it your freshman year when you decided that you wanted to get involved with sports, or was it from a media perspective, or was there any sort of thing before, like, oh, I'm trying this stuff out and I want to get involved?
Yeah, no, I think it pretty much was my freshman year. Before, like, I hadn't even thought of it all through high school. I wanted to be an anesthesiologist,
Ah,
like really in the medical field. And then I realized, like, oh, I can't see blood. So then that kind of went
yeah.
out the window. But all through high school, that's really what I was thinking. And then I was thinking more of like event management. I tried to like, my path was all over the place. And then freshman year, it wasn't until I was actually able to like go to a basketball game and feel like the environment, even though it was empty. I mean, still be able to be like a media member felt really, really cool. And then I really decided I wanted to do it this year, because I just got thrown in headfirst like into all these opportunities, and I love it. Like, it doesn't feel like an internship, doesn't feel like a job. It just feels like I'm going and like watching a basketball game and talking about it. So I don't know. It's probably this year
Yeah.
I really got passionate about it, but before this, I don't think really I thought about it much.
For you, and we had mentioned it earlier about Penn State, and that's a even larger sized sports environment and arena for athletics and covering, which I'm sure in that realm as well as you're right, there's small room for error. But if you had gone there hypothetically, do you think you would have progressed as high in covering all these sports games that if you went there instead of URI?
Eventually, I think yes. This fast though, definitely not. I mean, I'm only a sophomore.
Yeah.
Uh, so being able to cover these sports is like something that I wasn't even thinking I was gonna do starting out this year. So I don't think I would have gotten there as fast. I I like to think I'm a hard worker, so I think I would have gotten there eventually at Penn State, but I don't think there would be as many opportunities at Penn State as there is here.
And does that sort of speak to the level of what Shane and Michelle and or not Michelle, Michaela provide for those students in order to give you those experiences early on that maybe other schools don't want to give a young kid like yourself the time of day?
I mean, yeah, they've been super helpful with me, and then as well as just like the Harrington School in general, like all the broadcasting that's through Harrington School. So I think URI does a really good job getting their students involved, and they do want people to help. Like, there's always opportunities if you just ask for them. That's what I always try to tell people. If you just like reach out and email who you need to email, then there's always opportunities at URI. And yeah, I think the school does a really good job. And like, it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter how much experience you have. Like, if you are willing to work hard, then they'll take you in.
We talked about it earlier, and I don't want to go back, but it sort of will in a sense. Talked about how freshman year it's very limited and COVID and not being able to be in person and Zoom, and now it's sort of blossoming out to being able to go in person. How much of a learning curve this year was there for you to covering these games right at the gate and really making sure you're on top of it, or else you're gonna sort of fall apart and someone else is gonna take over?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a big learning curve, mostly just like time management, just
Yeah,
balancing. I mean, it's like a job, honestly, being like just the prep, like taking notes, being there. And some like in the beginning of like J term, I've had like 2 to 3 games in like 1 week. So it's a lot of like time management and just learning how to broadcast in
yeah,
general because like I said, I've had no experience before this. My first one was a volleyball game and I played volleyball, so it was easy for me to
yeah,
talk about. But like basketball, and I've said this on other podcasts too, but like I really didn't have any knowledge going into it. I played basketball in middle school and I didn't even like start in middle school. So I'm like not the biggest basketball girl, but it just took a lot of preparation, a lot of research, just watching like, NBA games, watching other college games, and just like learning how to talk, like how low, how high to talk,
yeah.
little things like what to wear. It's like there's a lot of little things that go into it that a lot of people don't even like really think about.
How much I'm curious, and it's similar to this in a sense where whether it be a situation like this where I'm contacting another student who's covering games, or someone like TJ Buchanan or Sebastian or whoever it may be, where I'm getting them, there's a sort of nervousness to it where you're trying to figure out, can you do this? Why am I contacting this person? Why am I covering this game in front of 7,500 people, however much the Ryan Center holds. Why am I talking with Tammy Reese, or is for you? How much was it your first game around, or your first few games, where you're just like, okay, I'm nervous. I don't know if I can do this, but I'm just gonna send it, and we'll see if it sticks, and if it doesn't, oh well, we'll just continue pushing forward.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of exactly my mindset. I wasn't sure if I was gonna like it. They just asked me to do it, and like if you get given an opportunity like that, you're not gonna say no. Like
Yeah.
you have to go do it. So I say this too. I get nervous before every single game. It doesn't matter if it's like volleyball. I'm doing baseball and softball this spring. Like if it's anything, I'll get nervous before. But like you said, it's just like a full send thing. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it. There's no not doing
Yeah.
it. Like my personality, if someone asks me to do something, like especially if it's a good opportunity, I'm gonna try. So it kind of takes the nerves out a little bit when you're just like, well, it's gonna happen.
Sure.
Try your best, and it's gonna if you're willing to work hard and put in the preparation, there's almost no way you're gonna do bad. So it's just honestly like a full send situation. Do your prep and just try your best.
I want to talk about your relationship with Shane and the other people, in the sense of when you joined, you're a freshman, or whether this year is a sophomore. What's that like in terms of wanting to participate and wanting to help out and cover stuff? Because they're people who they're professionals doing this, and they don't have to give you the time of day, but you're someone who really wants to put their foot forward and do this when other people certainly can do it on top of you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the biggest thing is just reaching out like initially and just making it clear that you want to succeed and that you'll work hard and you'll do pretty much anything to get there. I was given like I don't want to say a generic opportunity, but it was like a small stat role. Like at first I was just doing stats for football. And obviously like I really enjoyed doing that, but it wasn't like I was trying to figure out what I want to do for my career. So it's not something I want to do for my career. So I just kept asking to do different things, and eventually it was a Brown football game and it was away, so I wasn't gonna go, but I was like, I live in Rhode Island, it's like 30 minutes away. I can, so I just asked. I was like, can I go, maybe take pictures, like some anything, and they asked me to do the Twitter. So then I did the Twitter, and I just like fell in love with like the social media aspect. And I know I used to like some of my tweets, so have you seen my Twitter?
Yes.
Yeah. So my Twitter, I am very active on it now. I didn't use it before September, like ever. So that was like my first time using Twitter. I like fell in love with it, and then I started doing social media for football, like for the rest of the season. I do social media for basketball now, and that's like one of my main things that I love. And then I did the volleyball game, and then I reached out, and because at first I was only doing the women's basketball, and I was like, I want to do men's too. Like, is there any like, so if you just like keep reaching and like never be satisfied. It's good to be like happy in the place that you're in, but if you never be like, you don't want to be satisfied. You want to keep reaching for the next thing, and that's kind of what I try to do. Like, I'm never like completely settled. I'm always trying to look for to do.
Well, that sort of has to, I think, separate you from the rest of the pack. I'm sure in your field, where I'm sure there's some people who are satisfied with, and I don't know how it works for everyone. I know you sit in the front media section covering the games, and the other students, I don't want to say undesirables, but the other ones that are still working on their shtick in the upper section. How much of it, from your point of view and your perspective and take on things, that you really have to make sure you're stepping on the throat of those in charge to get across and get that next opportunity? Because you really, I'm sure, have to step up your game if you want to improve.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's tough just because there's a fine line of being like there's a fine line of being active and being annoying. Like I don't want to like, because they have their own jobs that they need to worry about. So if I'm constantly messaging them like, oh, what can I do? So the tip I would have with that is just have specific things to ask to do. Like you need to be creative in this industry, because everything's already been done. If you think about it, you need to, like you said, like just stick out in some way. So what I'm actually working on now is, rather than being like, what can I do with this? I'll try to come up with something like specific, and then be like, can I do this? That no one does, because like usually, why not? Like they're not usually not going to say no if you have something specific that you thought about. So being really creative kind of, I think, sets me apart a little bit, but that is the fine line. Like you don't want to be so like, can I do this? Can I do this? Then become annoying, and then you might get pushed away a little bit. So there's you got to balance the line.
You talked about preparation, getting ready for games, and knowing what to do and whatnot. And you've done a lot of women's games and some men's games, I'm sure, with Stone Freeman. And I know he's done a lot of work with Steve McDonald, the guy who does it for BO101. And you've done stuff with our dear close friend Zach Austin. You've done a lot of work with Stone and Zach. But what Stone sort of, I don't want to say he's a student because he's graduated now. He actually has a full-time job. But what have you learned from him when you've worked with him side by side?
Yeah, I always say like Stone is my biggest mentor just because, like I said, I knew nothing coming into this, and he showed me like the little things of like what to do. Like, for example, when I first started off, I would always say we, like when I was referring to like the Rams, and he was like, no, 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 like you cannot say we, like we're supposed to be unbiased. So he like kind of like steps in, and honestly, I just like I'm always observing. That's something else. Like I'm always like watching people around me and just observing Stone, like the way he acts around other people, the way he goes about his business, like you can learn so much from him.
Yeah.
So just like in his tone of voice, like how he says things, like how he like shortens things up to make it sound good, like just like little things. He's been a great mentor, and he's honestly like an open like encyclopedia. Like
Sure.
like if I have a question, like he's very clear, like he's always open for questions, and he has so much knowledge just because when he was in, like he's so close to us in age, so
Yeah.
like he's not very far fetched from like this, like where we are now. So he has so much knowledge that like is so valuable because he did so much in his time, and I'm trying to do that too. So just like him being so open and like ready to help has really been helpful to me.
And that speaks to the quality of person he is. And I think it's hard for I think a larger percentage of people to be like, where he's someone who was like is close in age, but also someone who's done so much here, not just as a student, but now progressing, doing more as an adult, and he's traveling to games, whatever he's traveled down. It must have been VCU and maybe some of the other ones. But my perspective, I had him on once, and I've tried to get him on a few more times, but each time it's one text, and it's two texts, and it's three texts each conversation, so it increases. So we'll get him on again one time. But he's someone who doesn't have to be nice to you and I. He doesn't have to be like that, but that's the type of person he is, and he's open, and he's just I'm sure you've learned a lot from in your experiences, whether it's working with Zach or working with Stone or someone of that nature. What was it like when you're making sure that you're making sure you're visible audio wise and visually, but also you're not getting stomped on by Stone, where he's sort of leading the play-by-play stuff?
Yeah, definitely. With Stone, I haven't done a broadcast with Stone in a while just because he's been like doing his thing, like he's doing great. So with Stone, he definitely leads it, and I let that happen because he has so much knowledge on basketball. I just fill in when I think that like I have something to add, like that's my role. But I do let him do whatever he needs to do, and I just kind of fill in. So I wouldn't say I'm like overshadowed, but Stone's voice is definitely heard more. Like, and I want that to happen. Like he has more knowledge. Like that's the role of the play-by-play person. With Zach, I think that we have a really good dynamic going just because we've been doing so many games together. Like when we first started, of course, it was a little rocky. Like we kind of like interrupt each other sometimes and all that. But now that we've been doing, because we've done almost every women's game together now. So having that dynamic with someone when you're repeatedly doing like the same thing with the same person, we have a really good like flow. And I actually said that after the last one that I did. I was like, that like we didn't interrupt each other. Like that was so good. And he was like, yeah. So you get more comfortable like when you do it with the same people. And same thing with Stone. Like the first one I did with him was volleyball, and he pretty much talked the whole time, and because I was just so nervous. But I've definitely like now where I'm today, like just having a little bit more knowledge, I've been able to add some more like some better like I don't talk. I say I try to say things of value now, and before I would just like oh yeah, that was a good shot. Like doesn't need to be said,
make it more entertaining and more productive on your part. We had mentioned this, when we were in contact with each other before this recording, then before we got going here about Cam's Corner and this and that, and you were on Abby Schilling's podcast recently. And I had mentioned this to Sebastian when I had him on before we got going as well, and talked about, making the rounds on this sort of stuff. Does that sort of speak when you're active, whether it's on social media, you're getting recognized, or on 3 podcasts, does that sort of speak to the quality of job you're doing and trying to do, but also the level you're trying to stay at where you're getting noticed and you're staying busy this way?
Yeah, I mean, I think what really has made me stick out through URI, just the amount of activity I have on social media. Um, I am doing a lot of work for the school, but I feel like I do make it known just by how much I post and like what I post. So I don't let it just like slip by that I like, for example, if I'm doing a game, I'll always post about it. I'll be like, watch this, like this is what I'm doing. Or like if I'm even posting on Twitter, like I post on the Brody men's basketball Twitter, I'll be like, I don't specifically say I'm posting on Twitter, but I'll be
Yeah.
like, check out the Twitter, like, and you
Yeah.
can guess that it's me. So I think what's really helped me like get recognized would be just be my activity on social media because I'm a sports media major.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to make myself like more known as Paige like for my name, and so I can like kind of build a brand off my name. I'm not there yet, not even close, but that's what I'm trying to do. So I definitely have a different appreciation for just like how much goes into each
Yeah.
game. Like even I like Stone always mentions them, Zach always mentions like the behind the scenes people because like they're constantly in our ear. Like we have those headsets on, yeah, to hear each other,
Yeah.
but the people behind the scenes are constantly like counting us down, telling us things to say, like telling us the stats. So like I have so much more of an appreciation for the behind the scenes people because I feel like no one ever thinks about that. Like
Yeah.
everyone sees it's on the screen, they're like, oh, okay. Like everything is a production. Like
Yeah.
even like the score being on the screen, the graphics that come up, like that's a different person for each thing. So I've had such a great appreciation for like people like that. And then for the people on the screen, I mean, I have so much appreciation for anyone who does that because I know how hard it is. Like if you
Yeah.
slip up for a second, like in this, like we were talking about, you can cut it out.
Yeah.
Like with that, it's live. Like if you like let's say I'm saying something like and Tahan, well, I'm saying a stat and then I'm
Yeah.
looking through my computer, I can't find the stat that I'm looking for, but I already started my sentence. I'm kind of in trouble
Yeah.
now. So you have to be so like
Sure.
on your game throughout the whole time that I have so much appreciation for like anyone who has the courage to go out and do that, especially the students like you are like Zach Austin. Play by play is so hard. Like I haven't tried it yet. I haven't done it yet, but just like being able to see the play and like just having that like split second like terminology that you have to like switch up. Like I have so much respect for Zach, for Stone, for anyone who
Yeah.
does this.
Well, and you bring up a good point in like this situation. If I ask a question that's, the shits and I continue it on or I explain too long, it's a weird thing, maybe from your see in this situation, I can't get my words out. But from your perspective, you may say, "Oh, that he went on a little bit with the question. It may be confusing. I can cut that out. I can cut out your coughing. Can cut out when you're crying from your water and coughing, all that stuff." Whereas live, you have all this stuff, and it's not just as you said, the notes in front of you where you can say this stuff. But if you're messing up on camera or on live, it's not the most desirable situation. And I give a lot of credit to that situation where you have people constantly in your ear telling this stuff, and this is coming. You have to make sure you're all doing it. And I'm sure that's also a very stressful situation, whether you're just starting out or you're continuing to do it. And as time goes on, you experience it. Now, and enough of that. I want to talk about the more meat and potatoes of this when I really want to have you on. We've mentioned it before, and I'll continue to say you've covered a lot of women's games. You've had firsthand experience viewing the rise out of the ashes that this program is now having again, where they're successful again since the last time in the 90s. And the men's team, well, that's another conversation that we can have as well. You've covered a lot of the women's games. You've been able to see this. You're from around, so you may have an idea, or you may have had an idea of the situation they found themselves stuck in for so many years. What's it been like to witness firsthand this women's team be as successful as they've been?
Like I can't even put it into words just because I am so like incredibly happy for that whole team. Like I know a few of the girls personally, but like just as a whole, like to come out of like you said, just like kind of nothing.
Yeah.
And Tammy Reese coming in and just changing the program, changing like the character, like the story of the program. It's just I posted it on Twitter the other day. It makes just my heart warm, like to see like a URI sport just succeed in this way, and no one deserves it more. They're such hardworking like athletes. Tammy Reese is probably the best person you can ever talk to. I'm not sure if you had the pleasure of talking to her.
No, I haven't. I'm not high enough yet to like yourself to converse with her.
You will one day. She makes everyone feel so important. Like
Yeah,
in
definitely.
that press room, she like if you ask her a question, she'll be making eye contact with you. Like even though she's in such a high place at this
Yeah.
school, like she'll talk to anyone. Like she's just such a great coach to like those athletes. I want to play basketball just so I can her
Yeah.
her athlete. But it's just been really cool like to see even the Ryan Center like get more people in it. I know last game I couldn't go unfortunately, but the last game was the most like filled game
Yeah.
ever, I think. And just like even the press room, like I posted this on Twitter too. It started off with me, Zach Austin, and maybe an Neocon, like literally 3 people in that room.
Ugh.
And sometimes there'd be 2. And then now it's filled. And it's just so cool to see, like,
Yeah.
especially a women's sport, just because, those never get enough coverage. To see them like kind of explode here, it's been like so, so cool.
How at the time of this recording, and you had mentioned this earlier, unfortunately their 13 or 12 game winning streak had just been snapped and they lost recently. How much of that recent loss have in regards to their hopes in the March Madness, do you think? Do you think it has a big play, seeing as they got votes to be ranked, but now they lost that streak and now that might affect them?
I don't think so. I mean, it all depends what happens at Dayton and then
Yeah.
at the tournament. I mean, Tammy Reese said it best. She's like, we can start another streak, and I think
Yeah.
that's just a perfect way to look at it. I don't. I think that they still have a great chance of getting into the tournament. I'm not sure exactly what the chance is, but if they can go and beat Dayton and go place at the A10 tournament, I think they have a great shot still.
I'm curious also, with the streak they have and everyone cares about statistics and numbers and how well a team's doing, do you think that helped that helped them in the sense of not being stressed out to continue that streak in order to, stay relevant?
Yeah, I think a big thing that they're focusing, because that streak was bringing them media.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's just a history being set every day. So I think it definitely did help staying relevant. But I think after coming to the Ryan Center, just what I saw on social media, people like fall in love with that team when they watch
Yeah.
them. So the people that came to the Ryan Center, I don't think that they'll go away just because they lost, because it was still a good game. I mean, they didn't shoot as well as they usually
Sure.
do. They didn't really. Dayton had a really good defense in the paint, which is where Rhode Island usually excels. So I think just watching the grit that they have and the fight that they had to the end of that game, I think people are going to come back no matter what.
Well, I would hope so, and I would hope that eventually, years from now, when they look back on this span of the last 4 years almost that Tam Reese has been here, that a few of the players that have played for her, and eventually her one day, they raise it up in the rafters because they haven't retired any sort of number in the last 60 goddamn years, which I don't know why. And I asked Orbjorn on here that same question, and he gave out some long excuse answer of, oh yeah, we're gonna look into that and all this fun jazz. But I hope they stay relevant. I hope that it doesn't turn people away. Although I also do think that loss, I'm sure, doesn't stress them out anymore, in the sense of, okay, we need to really continue to stay at this high level because of this success, and now we're getting all this attention. As I mentioned before, asking the last few questions, the men's program, and I talked to Will about this before the season started, and last week they started off hot, and now they sort of simmered down to a less than a boil into the pot of some penne pasta. How do you assess this team that's trying to stay afloat at chin level in the ocean of college basketball?
I mean, I cover the men's team not super frequently. I have a few times, so I don't really have a ton of like inside information on them, but I would just say overall, it's just like the little things that are just like frustrating to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, like everyone knows, like the free throws have gotten exponentially better. So
Yeah.
that's something that they've fixed. And I think that win against Davidson, even though they did lose against Dayton, like the next game around, it was a better game. And I think that's all that they need to. It's hard because I don't want to say anything.
Oh no, sure, yeah.
Negative for the team, but I think that they need to come together, and they did against Davidson, so like it's there. So that's just something that they just need to remember. Like they have that fight, just bring them to that next game. And I think that Dayton game, like I said, wasn't a bad game. I don't think it killed any sort of momentum that they had. I mean, they hadn't really built much momentum. They won that one game. So I think it's just the little things, and if they can bring back that fight they had towards Davidson, even towards Dayton in these next few games, and they should be able to finish the
Yeah.
season strong.
I asked this to Will when he was on last week or so ago, and this is I have this just this suspicion, and not, or maybe not suspicion, but I don't want to think of it, but it comes into your mind, especially with the women's team doing so well. The more they do, the better they get, and the more wins they get, and the more successful they become with Tammy Reese in charge and the rest of her great coaching staff, the more eyeballs other programs have on that program and the coaching staff there, and Tammy Reese. And a perfect example of that is Dan Hurley with URI a few years ago when they made the NCAA tournament 2 years in a row, and it came to a situation where everyone wants him back in the stay. Obviously, I want him to stay, and other people want him to stay, but it comes down to the green bills in the pocket that are getting used to compensate what they're doing for the school. And unfortunately, the state didn't have enough for Dan Hurley, so he goes to a bigger program. He gets paid more, and there's more eyeballs. With the success that Tammy Reese is having, has there been any point during covering these games where you've been nervous, where you're like, she may or may not. I mean, obviously, I'm sure her contract is a long one, but at all nervous, we're like, if they keep doing well, she may not be around here for much longer because she could go to a bigger program where she continue to have success and really grow another program.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a thought I think all Rhode Island fans have had, just because, like you said, more eyeballs are being brought to this program every single day. Just based on what I've heard from Tammy herself during the post games, like she's very happy being in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Like, loves building the program. I don't know anything beyond that,
Yeah.
and I mean, we all hope she stays,
Yeah.
but like wherever she goes, she's gonna make that program amazing. So I hope she stays here because
Yes.
it's great to have her. But like you said, it's all about where she's gonna get the best opportunity. Unfortunately, here the negative part is that we haven't been filling the Ryan Center, and that's
Yeah.
just that's a huge aspect that
Sure.
I mean, it doesn't really, like, the attention doesn't really matter, but having that support, I think,
Yeah.
of course, matters to a team. So that's been the one downside of Rhode Island. But I mean, she loves Rhode Island. She's loved the program that she's built. She's
Yeah.
very public about that. So I hope she doesn't leave. I
Yeah.
pray she doesn't. I'm crossing my fingers, but
I don't want her to see it either, because as I mentioned to you earlier, whether that part stays in, if I didn't stumble my words, looking back at my freshman year when I covered that one women's basketball game for the even if it was just a preseason game against BC, it's such a different dynamic between her and the former coach. And I don't want to dog the former coach. She tried her best, and you're not always going to be successful in things, whether it's doing play-by-play or covering a game or coaching or doing a podcast. But just the environment that Tammy Reese has created for URI women's basketball and URI in general, and sort of saving the program and bringing them back to prosperity. It's so great to see, and you would hate to see it leave, because then you're going to start from square one again, and I don't want to see that as a fan. And that's another thing, you talk about the Ryans not being full. It's another thing that I think is frustrating, especially now, because they're great athletes. There's no doubt about it. And they've done so well. I don't know what needs to be done to go see them. And I'm sure that's also another thing with the men's team, maybe more with the students, because you see a lot of students who are fair weather fans who only come when they're winning or when they're successful, and not when they were. I forget what game it was. There was a game a few weeks ago that I went with my father over winter break, and we were there, and there weren't a whole lot of students there. Next thing I know, I see all these drunk college students stumble over to the men's section. Of course, it was near the end of the game, and it's like, stick through the process. It's going to get better. It's going to be fine. And you want to be here now. So then when they really hit the mountaintop, you want to be there for it. Well, after this long and jumble and falling apart on my side of scrambling through questions and lose my place, and
No,
there's a whole lot of editing. Let me tell you that much, Paige. That will go on my part to get stuff out of the way. But I want to end this on the little segment I like to call the one word challenge. And for those who don't know what it is and say, what the hell is that? The one word challenge is when my guest, whoever it may be, it doesn't have to be just sports, it can be any other industry that I've had on, although it's really only been like 2 or 3. I put together a list of 5 or 6, maybe 7 things that have something to do with my guest, and it can be a person, it can be places, it can be, I don't know, anything else of that nature. I don't know the correct syntax word for that. But Miss Paige, are you ready?
I'm nervous.
Kingston, Rhode Island.
Home.
Antoine Walker.
Tall.
Tammy Reese,
The most amazing person in the world.
Zach Austin,
An icon.
the Ryan Center,
Boomin'.
and certainly last but not least, Paige Messier.
On her rise.
Well, Paige, I want to say sincerely, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for sticking for nearly an hour. It means a lot. Although, I'll cut some of the stuff out that we think we should be taken out, but I appreciate so much to witness this fast rise for someone who once used to be in that realm. Then when he left gallantly, and on my own note, I appreciate the time you spent and the excitement you had towards Want to Be On it. It means a great deal, and I'm glad that I set the precedent for quality interest. Although I'm not saying the other stuff wasn't good, but I mean nothing beats this one. Come on now. No, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was
Of
fun.
course. Well, and all those out there listening and watching, and I know there's millions and millions of you out there, do us a favor, subscribe, follow, like, comment, share, turn on post notifications, and all that fun jazz. Share it so you can, because 10 years from now, when you're watching the NBA Finals, where it is, and you look and you see who's that? Is that Doris Burke? No, it's Paige Messier. She's on there talking to LeBron James Jr. You're like, holy crap, this episode was amazing on the podcast. So do us a favor. Paige, is there anything that you would like to plug or promote? I usually let the time for that for my guest.
I don't think I have much. I mean, I just have my Instagram, Paige Messier _. I post like some fun reels. I post what I'm doing. So, and my Twitter. My Twitter's just Paige Messier. But other than that, no. Just watch ESPN Plus. Watch me on
watch ESPN Plus. Subscribe to ESPN Plus. Listen to her and watch her, and also Zach Austin as well. You don't want to leave him out of it, because he's up and at him. Follow on Instagram Nolan Cart Night, and on Twitter Nolan Cart Night for updates and news regarding the podcast. And in the words of Johnny Carson, I bid you all a heartfelt good night, and until next week when we see each other again.